Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the On Becoming Legend podcast, where every week it's my job to help you live a legendary life in whatever way you define it. I do this by bringing you content and lessons from my own life so you can learn from my mistakes and avoid them, and also by interviewing legendary people so you can learn from their stories as well. This week, I'm honored to be interviewing the legendary Bruno Guevremont. Bruno is a 15-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, serving his second tour on a team that dealt with more than 100 IEDs. That's improvised explosive device for anybody who's not familiar. He was medically released in 2014 and began the road to recovering his own mental health. And that same year, he completed an expedition to the North Pole, which was captured in the documentary March to the Pole. That spawned his personal quest to advance mental health awareness. And today, Bruno builds and rebuilds elite performers. He's focused on inspiring greatness on battlefields and in boardrooms, building high-performance leaders and organizations in every arena he enters. Today, Bruno is the CEO of Platinum Black Leadership, where he helps high-profile CEOs, executives, managers, and organizations navigate a clear path to the next level of greatness. Bruno, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Rory. I don't think I've ever been called legendary. that's the first.
I am glad to be the first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir.
And that's what we're going to flesh out. You're a legend in your own right, and we're going to talk about a lot of that today. So I'm going to start where I typically start with people. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about it. So my first question is usually, did you go to college, and why or why not?
No, I didn't go to college. I wasn't really interested back then in school. I did most of my learning after. School was difficult for me, and I found out after that, which is a really good point to bring up, is that actually school wasn't moving fast enough. I'm a mover. I like to move. That's why the military was a great platform for me. North Pole trip, all these things. I like to move. I'm constantly, even when I meet with my executives or I meet with my companies, I like to do it in face to face, right? Of course, we do it over the phone and now because of this situation, we're here over Zoom, but I like this face to face. It's always been the case. And in school, I did all of my learning after. So no, college wasn't in the point, but I did take some college courses and obviously some certification after that, yeah.
So what did that decision look like for you as you moved through high school and you're sort of, presented with the decision we all face, which is, do I go to college or not? What did that decision look like for you, and how did you decide where to go from there?
Right. So when I was in high school, I actually left school early. I was about 16 and I left school because it wasn't, I couldn't sit down. Back then, there was no such thing as ADD or ADHD.
Right.
You were just a problem kid. But funny enough, I recall very, very clearly, a lot of my teachers, a lot of the principals and people at the school were saying to my parents, Bruno's got great leadership skills. He's super intelligent. He's just a clown. He just don't listens. And he's always want to move and make everybody laugh and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, it's just because I can't sit down for 8 hours. And still, now you can see it, but your audience can't. But my office, it's all stand-up desks and whiteboards all around because I'm walking and talking as I'm doing my business. And so that was important for me. And then from there, when I quit school, a year later, I challenged the high school equivalency diploma. And they gave me the books. I studied, and within 3 months, I had my diploma. So it was like that. And it's the same thing when I did I owned the gym, which we're probably going to talk about it, but I became a fitness instructor. And the requirement for the diploma for that was 2 years. I did it in 9 months. So it's all about, getting things moving. I need to, It's always starting something. I always got something on the go, which drives my wife crazy, but it's always, because I say, okay, I'm going to get this done, then we can take a rest. She goes, we'll never take a rest. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And I've honestly, I've had, I went through all the way through high school and did 2 years of college and ended up having to drop out. But I have a similar attitude about at least the American public school system. I'm not sure how many similarities there are all, but the question for me as my kids are getting older and looking at going to school is, could I produce a similar product to a high school diploma in less time? And It's always just been a hands down. Yeah, absolutely. I was the same way. I spent 8 hours sitting in class, and it's like, you just get a bunch of busy work and just a bunch of wasted time. It's like, I could absolutely churn out somebody that has, like you said, is able to get a GED in less time. And it's like, so why not? Life is too busy passing us by.
And I think that maybe this isolation, this COVID thing that we're living in right now is going to redesign that, because there needs to be a redesign, I think, in the educational system, because kids aren't learning life skills. We're not learning any of those things. And it's all about retention and how can you grab something and repeat it. And I don't think that wasn't good for me, because I'm an outside of the box thinker, and I find solutions. I'm a very big on behaviors and patterns. It's what my thing. And I like to match things up and see where things aren't matching, and then I fix that up. That's what I do, and that's why I think I'm very efficient as a coach and as a consultant because of that. I just go in and I look at the people move, and I look at them, their behaviors, their patterns, their language even, of what they're using, and I can tell them. I thought it was earlier on in my life, I thought it was about fitness, because I could look at people move and I could like, hey, you should do this that way.
Right.
And at 19, I started doing programming for people back then, with Arnold and all these guys doing the great thing, right? And I was fortunate enough to meet him. And then the thing is that I thought it was fitness, but then when I opened my gym and I was coaching, I found that my coaching was more effective when I was coaching off the floor, not on the floor. It was all the 23, I had to coach people in the 23 other hours they weren't with me.
Right.
So I was like, oh, maybe I should look into that. And that's when I went and followed Tony Robbins and Erickson Coaching and neuro-linguistic programming and all that stuff. So now, I'm in my environment where I can actually incorporate all of that.
That's awesome. So you ended up getting you said the equivalency degree, right? So at what point did the military come into your awareness as something that you thought you wanted to pursue?
At a very young age. When I was 10 years old, I got the opportunity with my dad to go and live in Africa. I lived for a year in Africa, in the country of Zaire. Now it's called the Republic of the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, I think it is now. And I went and lived there, and it opened my eyes up to how the world was, because I had to travel to Europe and all these things. And I said, man, Canada and the States, North America, is such a beautiful place to live. How can we make this better? And I understood that the struggle in other countries of human rights not being up to, how can I serve that way? And I became a Boy Scout and then a cadet. And I always wanted to serve, but at the time where I became eligible to serve, the forces here in Canada were doing a force reduction. So they weren't hiring, they weren't doing it, they were actually letting people go and all these things. So it came around when I was a manager of a sports bar. I was 25 years old, and I always wanted to serve in any way that I could. And a recruiter was there. She was a regular client. And she said, Bruno, did you ever thought about serving? And I told her all about this stuff and what I like to do. She goes, you'd be perfect. She said, why don't you come down to the recruiting office? And she didn't throw me the line, do you like camping? Because we got a job for you. Long walks in the woods. Yeah. So we all fell for that one. But I went there and I did the test and I got recruited. And I haven't looked back since. I can tell you that my 15 years in the military was probably the best thing that ever happened. That's even fantastic. Though I got injured and all these things, I met some of the most amazing people. It is I'm going to say brotherhood, but it includes sisterhood and everything in there.
Right.
There's no borders. There's no race. There's no religion. Look at you and I, right? You serve. We've talked like about within 5 minutes, we connected right away, right? And then we do that around the world. And that's what I love about it. There's nothing else like it. It showed me direction, purpose. It showed me how to be disciplined. It gave me so many skills that a lot of people would give anything to get. Right. And we got it. Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm curious so that's, you said 25. So there's, an 8-ish year gap between when you finish high school and you end up going that. So during that period, what were some of the things that you thought might get into? And I guess what I'd really love to understand is kind of how you made the decision about what you were doing at that time in terms of work and personally. Was there a direction you were following, or were you just kind of bouncing around?
Oh, very, very well asked question. That's awesome. I was bouncing around. When I was 13, I started working, right, as a dishwasher in a restaurant, and I started in that industry. I worked in it for 11 years until I joined the military, basically. Right. And I started washing dishes, then became a busboy at 14, and then a server, and then a bartender. And to tell you the truth, it was a great industry because it serves me today. Because I understand to the highest level customer service. It gave me a customer service that paid off at the gym. It pays off right now in my business and everything, about really understanding. I find that's another thing that's disappearing really quickly, customer service, because people just want their thing. Just give me my thing. And then when they don't get it fast enough, they think it's not good customer service. You have no idea what good customer service is. And so I was kind of like bouncing around. Actually, I was trained as an electrician because my dad was an electrician. I worked on construction at the same time. To tell you the truth, Rory, when I left school at 16, I went across the street. There was a mall, and I got a job right away, a second job, right? Because I was already on the weekends. I was already a busboy.
Right. So
I went across and I got a job here. I don't know if you had it in the States, but it's called consumer distributing. And basically, it was kind of like you had a catalog at the front. There was nothing on the shelves. You just had a catalog, and you ordered your pieces, and then somebody would go in the back and bring them all your toys or whatever you were ordering. It's kind of like a different thing. You didn't have to shop. You just had to, kind of like the precursor to online or Amazon or stuff. And I was working in a warehouse. But I was working on construction, and I actually had a company, a building management company at a very young age. I think we were 19, me and my buddy. And we were cutting grass, we were cleaning floors, painting, doing all these things. And I always had 2 or 3 jobs. And then when I got to 25, I kind of knew this wasn't going to go that far. There's only so much, unless you know, one of the guy actually that was working with me now owns the restaurant, obviously, oh, nice. But not many people do that jump. And at the time, I didn't have that in me to be an entrepreneur or something like that. I had a small business and all these things, but I said, you know what, I need something else. And that's when the military came in. So I did bounce around a little bit, I think, but it was needed. And I don't regret anything of it because I had the fun that I needed to have, especially in that industry. And when I joined the military, I was good to go.
So where did all that come from? Because most 13-year-olds, at least the ones I remember when I was 13 and the other ones that I met, are not, you know, just biting at the bit to go get a job and work and produce. So, you know, where did that, is that just one of your superpowers that you were born with, or is that something that was cultivated by your parents? I mean, how did that come up?
Yeah, well, my dad was gone pretty much all of, since I was 5 to all of that, working outside the country. And my mom was the only one there. And they were really, both of them were really hard workers. They were really hard. It's all about working. That's all it was. And then with, like I said, with the fact that I can't sit down too much, I needed to work. So work for me. And then once you realize as a young kid, you're making money, you're like, man, I can buy my own stuff. Right. Funny enough, though, my mom caught on to that. And at 14, I had to pay rent.
Oh, no way.
I had to pay room and board. Yeah,
oh, that is fantastic. Good for your mom. That is.
Well, at the time, it wasn't good, Rory, just so you know. At a 14-year-old, what do you mean you're taking some of my pay? She goes, this is how it works. And then even at a time when I was, I got my first car, I believe, at around 17 or 18. And I said, I need a loan. And my mom says, I'll loan you it, but this is how interests work. And she did a contract and everything and all that. So yeah, at the time, it wasn't fun. I was like, what are you talking about? All the other parents are buying cars for their kids and everything. You're making me work for them. But now, am I grateful, Rory? Absolutely.
I'll bet.
Absolutely, I am. Because I understood about interest. I understood about hard work. I understood about, putting money aside and all these things. So it was about that. And I needed to be busy because we all know that idle hands are the work of the devil.
That's right. Yeah. And like you said, super valuable as much as you might not have liked it. I'm curious quickly, just what was it? You said your dad worked, you said you did some electric or construction work with him. So what took him to Africa and why was he out of the country all the time?
Yeah. So he was an electrician, a very good one. And he liked to work on big projects like hydroelectric centrals and like a big turbines and all this stuff. And then the way to get that kind of work, especially in those days, we're talking about the 80s, 90s here, right? There wasn't a lot of that big work going on in Canada. He had already worked up north when we built up all those hydroelectric that now feeds New York and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But back then you needed to travel. So that was his goal in life. And he went and did it. We had a conversation about that actually a couple of years ago. I said, why were you gone all the time? He says, I just wanted to be the best that I could at that stuff. And he did. And actually he ended up as a teacher in that. And he was one of the best. He was a very good teacher of that. And funny enough, everything he taught me is what made me one of the best bomb techs up here. Because circuitry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Circuitry, where the wires. And before that, I was a weapons specialist, weapons technician. So in the turrets and all that stuff, I had no problem figuring out circuits and how things work, right? So just got that thing. So that's what he did.
That's fantastic. So I'd love, what specifically attracted you to serving in the military? I mean, you said it was something you thought about all the time, and especially after having seen kind of the way the world was in other places. I mean, what specifically about serving in the military really drew you into that world?
The true answer?
Sure.
G.I. Joes. G.I. Joes, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando, Rambo, all these guys. I thought, man, there's something about these guys that are just self-sustainable. They're survivors. They always find a way and everything. Obviously, now we understand Hollywood, but at the time, that's what it was. I said, man, these guys are doing extra. And G.I. Joe was all about helping others. It was all about, making the world a better place, getting rid of evil and all this stuff. At the time, it might have been a childhood thing or, a very silly thing, but it's what drove me to join. And to tell you the truth, when I joined the military, it's exactly what I got. It's exactly what I got. I got to do everything that I wanted in the military because of that platform. Right? I wanted to jump out of airplane, rappel out of choppers, be a weapons specialist, be a bomb specialist, be a diver. I got to do all of that. And I'm very, very fortunate for that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And it is a fine line, right? Obviously there's a lot of stuff in Hollywood that's not accurate. I'm pretty sure I saw Dwayne Johnson take a 50 caliber machine gun and hip fire it in one of the G.I. Joe movies. So ignoring some of that, but yeah, like you're saying, there's a lot of the elements of that lifestyle that are very real that you can definitely live if you go serve in really any branch. So that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you got that GI. And I think, honestly, let's be honest, if I got more veterans to talk about why they joined, honestly, I think there'd be more, movies and shows and things like that kind of sparked that interest.
Over coffee, over beers, that's what they said.
Absolutely.
Of course. Why would you join? If you don't know about it, why would you join? Oh, hey, why from the recruiter saying, hey, do you like camping? You only catch a couple of guys for that.
Yeah, word's going to get out at some point.
Yeah.
I would love to hear you talk about what advice you have for somebody who right now is thinking about joining the military or trying to decide if that's the right path for them.
Yeah. So the thing is that I think the best advice I ever got from somebody that was in the special forces, he says, and everybody says, how hard is it and all these things. And everybody that I met that actually reached higher levels in the military says, how bad do you want it? And that applies for life. How bad do you want it? What is it that you want when you're going to join the military? Because joining the military is not a job. It's not even a career. It's who you are. It's who you become. That's why it's so hard to get out, Rory. And you know something about that, right? It's so hard to transition out because it's who you are internally and with the conditioning that you are doing. But if you're somebody that is looking for direction, purpose, or to find out what you're really made of, I think the military is the greatest platform for that. The military is the greatest platform for conditioning you. Who in their right mind would run towards the bullets? Who in their right mind would jump into a country that's at war? Nobody. So it's about conditioning. It's about getting you to know who you are, finding the skills, teaching you all these things and what you're capable of, right? And everybody at every level, it doesn't matter. This is a very big thing that everybody wants to. I know that in the States, and now they started that here in Canada, that you can direct apply for special forces, but you still need to do the stuff, right? Before you needed to, when I was in, you needed to join at a basic, either the infantry or whatever trade you would, and then you went up and then you applied and then you did the selection and then you went selection again and all these things. Now you can do direct entry, but you still need to pass the test and the requirements and all these things. And that's another way to catch you because they know that the success rate is 0.003% or something like that. Right? You got better chance to catch COVID today than to join the SEALs, right? So unfortunately, but that's how hard it is. So, if you really want to find out what you're made of, some of the best things that I've done about fear, heights, adrenaline, everything was in the military. And some of the times I even had a smile on my face when we were doing selection, right? And they're putting you to confined spaces, height or fighting or, running till you're tired because you haven't slept in 5 days. And you really find out that you can do a whole lot more than you thought you could. And the military is the only, that I know of, platform that can provide that for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there's just, it's great for putting you into environments where, like you said, you're challenged at such a high level and most of the time, there's no option in your mind to quit, right? Because, especially like you mentioned earlier, the brotherhood, even if you want to, so many times you're going to keep going because you're with those other guys or gals that are also serving. You don't want to let them down. I mean, there's a ton of benefits to it. And I love that aspect of it for sure.
And that's what it becomes, right? And you don't want to let the other person down, right? You don't want it once you're in the military, it's not about you anymore. It's about the guy next to you and the girl next to you and your whole team. You don't want to be that guy. You've heard that before. I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
Everybody says, well, which guy? That guy.
That guy.
That guy. I don't want to be that guy. Whatever you think it is, I don't want to be it.
Yeah, that's so true. I would love to hear, what did your parents have to say whenever you told them you were joining the military? Was this something that they sort of knew was coming? I would love to know what their reaction was.
Well, by that time at 25, I was, pretty old actually for joining, because most people join at 18, 19, very young. So at 25, I was pretty old. So I was already on my own. I left home at 17, and I was on my own and everything. They were really pleased, obviously, for me to join the military, because like I said, I was just working bars and restaurant. I was a manager, bouncer, all these things. And there wasn't really any direction. So when they saw that I was picking up something like that, they were pretty pleased about that. And it's important to have that conversation too, right? To make sure that you have that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, it was very well received. And you know what? Even though that I got injured and all these things, that's a conversation I'll have with my son as well. He's gonna, whatever the choices that he does, if he said, "Hey, Dad, should I join?" I'm not bitter about it. I'm not anything, right? I say, no, actually, it gave me direction. It made me who I am today. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm actually just like you. So I joined 26. I went in, which made me like a grandparent in my basic training class. And
were you course senior a lot?
No. So you talked about the direct entry program. So they have a program here called 18 X-ray, where you basically immediately go into the pipeline for special forces. And they had, for some reason, they had basically created my basic training class stacked with all those guys. I think out of 180 people, there was like 140 of us had signed these special forces contracts. Wow. And so because of that, and I guess just kind of the nature of things, the average age in my basic was like 23. So we were already kind of on the older end. And then I was like on the outside of that. But it was, that was much different. I fully expected to be in there with like fresh out of high school, 18-year-olds and like a completely different experience. So.
Yeah, it's a criteria up here in Canada that you got to be 25 and older and have actually some service in. When I was in,
right.
So you had to be fully trades qualified, had at least 5 years in, and you were older than 25. Because think about the maturity and the mentality you need to be able to do that kind of role. It's just they just don't want flash in the pans, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think I want to say it's 20 for ours, and we've been doing the direct entry program at least since 9/11. I'm not 100% sure, but it's been around for a long time. But yeah, I completely agree, especially when you start thinking about what you're going to be doing, because I don't want most American 20-year-olds working with a 50-year-old general in some other country. Like, that's not the guy that I want having the conversations. I want, like you said, somebody with a little more maturity, a little bit more experience and perspective and composure. So
it's the pointy end of the stick. That is for sure.
For sure. Right? When did they start doing the program in Canada? Is that a relatively new thing?
Yeah, now, I retired as a clearance diver. So here in Canada, just to explain to the audience, here in Canada, we're a small force. There's only, I think we're reserve and regular force. We're 60,000, I think it is.
Wow. Holy
yeah.
God.
So it's a very small forces. I think we can ramp up to like 80,000 if we needed to, but even for this COVID, they're actually recalling some people if they wanted to serve again for that. So they, what was the question again? Sorry, I went.
We were talking about the direct entry program in Canada, or whenever that.
Yeah. So as a clearance diver, once again, that was a specialty trade. So you needed to be in a trade, then do a ship steam diver course or combat diver course, and then from there you needed to be recommended, and then do all the testing and everything, and then a selection. And then from that selection, you were going on the course. So, but now you can actually apply from the street to become a clearance diver, do the selection, and then go through basic training and all that stuff. So yeah, it's changed a little bit, but that's like, I'm going to tell you maybe 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but it hasn't been that long. And I don't think you can still go into the special forces.
Well, for anybody who's listening and thinking about signing for one of these programs, keep in mind that the reason this program exists is because it also benefits the military.
Yeah.
because out of 100 people who sign up, maybe one of you will make it, which means there are 99, possibly higher qualified, higher educated people that the Army can sort of just put wherever they want. So,
Yeah, that's why they have the selections, right?
Right.
So when I went on my airborne course, we started 43, we finished 21. And when I went on my clearance diver selection, which is one of the hardest course in the forces, we started 40 again, and we finished 8.
Wow.
5 NCM and 3 officers that we finished out of that. And that's 10 days. In 10 days, we lost that.
Right.
When I was on special forces selection, we started 50, and I think they picked 1 guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was, the selection class was, I think 380, and we left with 120 in 19 days. I mean, it's trimmed all those people out. And then if you look at the entire curriculum, which is, it takes about 3 years to get through everything, not just being selected. We went from, in my basic training class, that 140 guys, I think maybe 10 or 15 of them actually made it all the way through all of it.
And now they got 100 guys to put in other trades,
right?
To feed the other trades. It's a genius plan when you think about it.
Yeah, because most of the guys have degrees. They're older. I mean, it's a completely different enlistee than the 18-year-old guy just out of college.
Yeah, I like the concept of it because it gets you to roll the dice.
Right.
How bad do you want it? And are you really? And it really weeds out. Selection is all about weeding out people. I think that if there was a hiring process in companies like that, you would find out what people are made of.
It's so funny you bring that up. I was actually just telling my wife the other day, I was like, I wonder if I know somebody and could maybe weasel my way into selection as a civilian just for the demands of it, like just to keep myself sharp. And she was like, that's ridiculous.
But that's why we signed up.
I was like, no, you get something out of it. It's like, I can't explain it to you, but.
Yeah, you do. You get something out of it. Yeah.
I would love, so you served for 15 years. I would love to hear you talk about some ways that serving was different from what you expected. And this can be either good or bad, but I just love to hear some stories about, or things that you sort of encountered or experienced or learned that were different from the perspective you had before you went in, if you can even remember back that far.
Yeah, I can remember. No, actually, serving was great. But like everything else, there's ups and downs, and there's things that, don't roll. So, we have a joke in the military which says, if it ain't moving, paint it, right? So there's a lot of that. So a lot of guys talk about, all the great times we had in this thing, and that's the beauty of it. That's why you and I can laugh and we can joke about the one-liners and the dark humor and all that stuff and the cool stuff that we did. But I can tell you that's probably out of 15 years, if you put it all together, maybe 3 years.
Right.
The rest of the time is pushing a broom, doing tasking over here, doing security over there, doing that stuff, doing rainstorm up here, ice storms up here, doing shoveling snow boardwalks, kind of like that stuff. So that's the stuff they don't talk to you about.
Right.
That's where exactly. The recruiters, they don't talk about that, right? That's where the line, if you like camping, we got a job for you, right? Because they entice you with that stuff, which is great because it does, like you say, me and you are talking about it. In 15 years, we only talk about the good stuff because it surpasses all the bad stuff. But like anything else, the military is a big organization. It's a big machine. It takes people in, transform them to do what they want to do, and then they spit you out. And that's the thing. And that's where we need to be smart, and we need to be able to say, hey, these are the skills that I got. And then now how can I use them to benefit, the greater good again, right? Because even though I was medically released, the one thing that kind of got me going, because there was a period, because I was injured, there was a period where I was bitter and I was not happy because when I do my presentation or I go into guest speaking or something, I always tell that to the people. I said, when you transition out, what kind of job am I going to do? So I asked them, what job do you have for a guy who jumps out of planes, blows stuff up, and dives under water? Nothing. You don't have a job for that. Maybe customer service on the phone somewhere. But the thing is that you don't. So your identity is totally crushed out. But the thing is that the military brings you so much stuff, and you get good out of it. So I needed to kind of really do the pros and cons of what I did, and then really take the good and then move on from that. But there's some bad. We got injured. We lost some people. You're doing the dirty work is what you are. And sometimes, you know, as you can realize now, that sometimes you're sent somewhere to do something that you don't have the full picture of. But you just go do your job, because you're not doing the job for the guy, you know, for the politicians or for the country, all these stuff. You're serving the country, but you mean you're doing a job for you, Rory. I'm doing the job for the next guy. I'm doing,
Right.
like, my buddy's going, so I'm going to go with him and we're going to go do that. And it becomes about that. So, you know, the military was, like I said earlier, the best thing that happened to me. It gave me skills that I could have only dreamed of. It gets me to be on par with the executives that I coach, right? Because how many times do you think I heard at the beginning when I started going out there and knocking on doors, where did you do your MBA? Well, I don't have an MBA, right? But when I sit in the boardroom and people, and it took a while for me to figure that out, I can keep up to anybody because I have skills that they don't have. Or we have some of the similar skills, we just call it different.
Right.
Right? We are driven. We don't quit, personally. We never quit. And we're driven by the mission. Whatever that is, we're going to get it done, and we don't go home until it's done, which is different now when, you know, when you go into the corporate world, people punch in, punch out, they go home, and, you know, work is just work and everything. We have a different perspective about that. And that carries on, and it shows on when people know me and they hire me and we go in and I work with them or a consultant, and they go like, where are you from, man? What do you do? That's the military. Yeah. That's what it is. We can be professional, we're disciplined, we're doing these things. And people say, like when I first got out, this little thing, I applied to be a police officer. And I showed up for the ride-alongs that you have to do. And because, you know, like I said, my identity was crushed because the military is telling me, we don't need you anymore.
Right.
So I was looking for work that was parallel to that. So I was a bomb tech. I was trained weapons specialist. I was all these things. So I was very attracted to the police, and the police was attracted to me. So it was going really well. And then I would show up for my ride along 20 minutes early, Rory, right? Because if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. Right. That's everything. Right. So in the military, we have that thing. Every rank adds 15 minutes. So by the time the guys have been on the parade square for like an hour before the CO shows up. Right. So the thing is that I'd show up 20 minutes early, and the guy at the desk or the girl at the desk says, yes, can we help you? And I said, I'm here for the ride along. And they look in the book and says, well, it's at 6. I said, yeah, it's 20 to 6. And they go, why are you here? Seriously. I like this. I was like, what? What do you mean? Why am I here? Well, we don't know what to do. Well, I guess sit there. So I would sit there with the guys that were there for the police station for whatever reason. I was just sitting there with them, just waiting, all dressed up nice and everything. And I couldn't understand it. And that's something that is the same thing when I opened my gym. People were showing up 5-10 minutes late for their appointments. And I'd be like, at first I was insulted by that. I was really affected by it. I was like, it was kind of like a sign of disrespect, but that was, I was thinking it's the military training of me, you know, all these things. And then I adjusted, obviously, with understanding that that's not how the civilian works. And not everybody, obviously, because, you know, we show up on time, we do these things, everybody's, so it's not a generalization, but it's just the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. So this seems like a good place to talk a little bit about mental health. And I would love to know from your journey, what was the first time you remember kind of realizing something was wrong, or that maybe there was something that you couldn't handle on your own, or whatever. I mean, however it manifests itself. I just would love to hear about when you first became aware that there was a problem.
Right. So on my second tour, like you mentioned, I was part of a counter IED team, so counter improvised explosive device team. And basically we would get called from the States, from Canada, because we were serving everybody and in our area, and we moved a couple of areas and all that. And it was very, very busy. We did over 100 IEDs, and that's the one we got to. Another work that nobody talks about when you watch like the Hurt Locker and all these things, right, which we can talk about, the representation of that. But the thing is that what they don't talk about, because it's not as sexy, is the post-blast investigations that we do. So we actually get to a scene where the IED went off and we need to clear the area, gather the evidence and all these things. And it's just mayhem, right? It's just very difficult to deal with because there's dead soldiers, there's everything. It's just carnage. And we're so well trained. We just push everything aside and we just continue to do that. And then I also did a live suicide bomber, right? I'm one of the only Canadians to ever do that, to dismantle a live suicide bomber test. And that was difficult not for the job, but from what came out of it. So basically, when I dismantled everything, we had our tactical exploitation team guy. He went over and interrogated him right there. So when we say interrogating him, I don't want to say in a bad way. He just went and asked questions.
Yeah, right.
Because, you know, and all that. And the thing is that what we find out, Rory, is that the guy had Down syndrome, was mentally challenged.
Wow.
2, he had been fasted for, you know, to go to heaven to Allah. He had been fasted, and then they had told him that if he didn't do that, they were going to kill his family. Now that changed the face of war for me, because not everybody's a willing participant.
Right.
How could that affect you, right? And then I met the Afghan people when we were on patrol or doing our stuff. You know, I did 2 tours, and they're very welcoming, very friendly. There's a thing, actually, what they represent in Lone Survivor, Marcus Luttrell. They have these rules that you must harbor and help people, that, you know, these things. That's how genuine they are. Mm-hmm. And they were all nice and everything. And that's when you start questioning things and all this stuff. And then so the post blast was really hard. And then we lost some people over there as well, some friends. So when I came back, you know, you're tough, you're doing your thing, you're happy to be home. About, I would say, between 3 to 6 months, I started noticing that I was getting angry really quick. And I'm a big, you see me now, but I'm a big teddy bear. I'm like a big guy. I just love to have fun and all these things. And I was like getting angry, jumpy. I'd get stuck behind buses and smell the diesel, and I'd be transported back to Afghanistan. Driving was a difficult thing, because driving, you need to keep the vehicles away from you overseas.
Right.
Here in traffic, this guy. So, and what I found out, and still today happens, is that we became very adept at reading people's body languages and everything. So I'd go to the supermarket and see people being aggressive with the cashier, and it would send me off. And I was like, man, something's off. And I went to the doctor at the unit. We had a unit doc, and I explained what I was going through, and I was starting to have a hard time sleeping and all this stuff. And she goes, well, Bruno, I think that you're exhibiting symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, my response to that is I say, hey, doc, I don't know where you went to school. Not this guy. Right? Not this guy.
The standard answer for pretty much anybody who's heard that line.
Right? Not this guy. The other guys, maybe, not this guy, right? And just so you know, I'm French Canadian, so it doesn't happen to us. We're immune to that stuff. So no. So, and then a second time I went, I was like, because now the sleep was getting affected. And I think that's the major component that kind of sets things off in a, you know, it starts happening, you start noticing it, but when you start missing sleep and having the night terrors and all these things, it starts to really go down fast into that rabbit hole. And then I went to see her a third time because I had a plan, I had a place, and I couldn't go on anymore. And the only thing that kept me around was my son at the time. I said, I can't let him grow up without a dad and all these things. So I reached out one more time, and the doctor, she goes, Bruno, this is still the same diagnosis. This is what it is. Like, you're having a hard time. And she said, do you want help? And I said, yes, I want help. I want to, let's do something, because I can't go on like this. The things are falling apart. And, you know, when we went, you know, at the unit, it's the same thing. You know, in the military, there was this culture of drinking. Yep. You know, you have beers, you have the mess, everybody, you know, saddles up to the bar, and we have drinking. And we actually, you know, drink and not talk about it. Actually, some senior guys would say that, just have another beer, don't talk about it. And I'm like, okay, but then it's not sustainable. It's not a healthy way to do things. But then I said yes, and right away they acted really quickly. They sent me to mental health. I got help right away, and I did that. And I learned from there that, you know, it's also in your hands to do that. So that was the time, and the recovery from then is still ongoing. It's still what it is. It's an injury. It's actually been recognized as a physical injury, because it does lesion your brains. It changes the chemistry, changes the neural pathways and everything. And then more added stuff of, you know, everything that we went through in the military. And then that was the journey about it. It was just about reaching out and really finding out what was happening. But for a guy who, you can understand, that's, you know, we do crazy things. We jump out of planes. We do all this stuff. We're super fit and all that. And then to be told that you're broken was very, very hard to hear. It was very hard to hear, and to accept even hard, right? I was going up that big river in Egypt, the Nile, for a long time, right?
Yeah. And I know that that's a real challenge that everybody faces that has a similar situation, but I think there's also a parallel here that so many people can relate to where, you know, like you said, you're basically, you know, how you identify as being called into question. And I think that's something that spans beyond the military. And I would just love to hear how you managed that, because there are soldiers who suffer the same symptoms that you did, but out of fear or I don't know, whatever it is, they never say anything about it and they just suffer, right? They just struggle in silence. So how did you manage shifting your identity, but also, you know, developing the courage to be able to be transparent and open about this?
Yeah, you know, today we can say, oh man, it just happened like this, but obviously it's a transition.
Right.
My tour was in 2009. I was diagnosed in 2011, I believe. 2012, the proceeding for release happened, and I was released in 2014. So there was a period of time that stuff is happening. And while you're still in it, that was what difficult. That's when my marriage came apart. It was a whole bunch of stuff that came apart. It's just, you know, this struggle, this darkness that just goes on. I want to get better. I don't want to get better. I want to, you know, you call it. So at that time, I could tell you there was 7 days of darkness. And as I was in 2012, like I said, the proceeding to start the release from the military started. I asked myself a question because I was on so many medication. I was so many things that was going on, and I was doing their thing, but something was just off. And when I went and talked to a mental health psychiatrist, he said, here's another pill. And something kind of woke up. Two things happened. This guy says, here's another pill. And then when I went to the pharmacy, the base pharmacy, they said, oh, we got to call Ottawa, which is our Washington, D.C., our capital. We got to call Ottawa to get this one approved. And I was like, whoa, man, why? Why is that? So I said, give me the name of this thing. And I researched it. And it was a bipolar medicine.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? So I started doing some research. And then I fell upon, when I was at the unit, somebody came in and was a mental health expert. And he did a presentation on neural pathways and what happens to your brain when you're going through trauma. And the light bulb came on, Rory. Something came on and said, wait a minute. So in 7 months that I was overseas, my brain created new neural pathways to be able to deal with this trauma. So that means that I can rewire my brain to be healthy again.
Right.
So I was like, okay, what was I doing consistently that was serving me when I was on top of my game? And that was working out. So I started working out again. And at the beginning, I got to tell you, man, like I had stopped working out. I had been doing CrossFit, obviously, since 2007, because that's back then, that's what Special Forces did to be able to make selection and all that stuff. And so I started working out, and my workouts were 5 minutes long at the beginning. They were just little workouts, push up this, kettlebell this, a little bit of this, but then I started feeling better. And that little portion, that little 15, 20 minutes in my day gave me two things. One, endorphin release. Yep. Two, a sense of accomplishment in the day. At a time where you had no purpose, no direction, no nothing, you thought you were broken. So the working out started happening. And then I started working out and then became an addiction. Then I was working out like 2-3 times a day. I dropped down so much weight. I was like 180 ripped. It was a beautiful thing. But I was just this thing. And then that's when I started talking to my doctors about coming off these meds. I just was so lucky, Rory, to have just a glimpse of clearness in my head to say, hey, we can change this. Somewhere, somehow, right? Either God, the universe, or something just sent me this thing, says, hey, man, you can change this. And I started weaning off the medicine, which is actually harder than coming on and all these things, because it affects your brain chemistry. But good for me, the physical fitness was there to kind of like flush things out and all these things. So it was really, really important. And then, from there, I started to research about mental health, research about the brain, research about neuroscience, what can we do, well-being. And then as I was working out, people started working out with me at the base gym. And then at one point, there was like, I remember one time there was 21 people working out with me. And then the staff that runs the gym at the base, they're civilians, and they were getting mad at me. They tried like 5 times to stop me. because that's their job to train people. And they said, you can't coach, you can't do this thing. And I was like, I'm not coaching, right? Yeah, we saw you. I said, okay, let's go over to the weight room and see guys coaching each other all the time. That's all I'm doing. I'm just working out, and then I'm helping people. But out of that, somebody said, Bruno, have you ever thought about opening a gym? Now remember, I already had my fitness and nutrition diploma from before. So I was like, man, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a gym. So I took my veteran money, I opened a gym, and then that moved on, and I continue on to finding things, which the North Pole expedition came in, which the mental health advocate came in, and all these things. I don't know how if you want me to just go through that, or do you want to ask the question about that? I don't want to.
I want to talk about mental health issues for a second,
yeah.
Before we move on to the other stuff. I would love to hear you talk about how you think about mental health. And you mentioned briefly that, it's kind of a continuing struggle. So is this, do you look at it as something that can be overcome in the sense that you're, quote unquote, better, or is it a lifelong challenge to just manage and live the best that you can live in spite of everything?
That's a very good question. I think the only thing I would do would be to reframe the lifelong challenge. I think that it's something that a lot of people, I hear this a lot when I coach and I talk to people, says, I just want to go back to who I was. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Nobody goes back to who they were. Right. There's some, great quotes out there that says, no man steps in the same river twice, right? Because the river's constantly flowing. Change and consistent. That the only consistent thing is change. So you're constantly changing. You're constantly going forward. So now the thing about mental health is that you just need to understand what your needs and your wants are. And one of the things that I find is that we've been somehow conditioned to give our power to the doctors, to the psychiatrists, to all these things which are there because they want to serve, they want to help, they want to do these things, but they're overtaxed. They've got too much patience. Everybody's way more mental health now than ever before. And the thing is that they go there and they say, okay, doctor, fix me, right? And the guy and women, they're like, I don't know what to do. So what comes out? What's the easiest way? They got 8 minutes to see. What's the easiest way? Here's a pill. Because the guy over at the pharmaceutical said, this is a good thing. Here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, I know you're struggling. You're having a hard time. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You are the only answer to fixing your mental health. The first thing you need to figure out is, what do I have? Right? And be very careful with labels, because they'll label everything. I don't know if you know the history of the DSM-5, but that stuff is, we're not going to go into it. But the thing is that they can basically label anything that they want with that book. But a label is not an ending thing. What it can give you is just a sense of direction. Okay, I have post-traumatic stress. As you can see, I dropped the D. I didn't use disorder. Right. So post-traumatic stress, which is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Okay. They say that the statistics are 4 in 5 people in their lifetimes will go through a mental health challenge in their life. You're either a breakup, a death, loss of a job, loss of your house, whatever, a car accident. It's all the same. And just so you know, mental health doesn't discriminate. It's not because we went to war that we get it worse than the person. I hear that all the time from police officers that are talking, Bruno, it's not as bad as you because I didn't go to war. I said, what are you talking about, man? You live this every day. There's not one door that you go knock on to go and tell somebody they're a great citizen. Think about it. Yeah. So yeah, I went through 2 tours of 7.5 months, and I went through some stuff in the training and everything that's gone too. But you have been living this for 10, 15, 20 years every day. Every time you're on shift, you deal with bad stuff. So of course it's going to get to you. So let's put this right here. It doesn't discriminate. We're the same. So that lifts a big weight off their shoulder. So I want you to understand that. 2, once you know what you have, then you go, what do I want? That is my first question to my executive. Is the first question to the guys that are suffering. What do you want? Well, I want to feel better. Okay. Why? Right? And continue on that to get to don't stay at the surface. Really go in. What is it that I want? What is missing? What do I need? And how will I know that I got it? How will we know that you have achieved what it is that you want? And then go into that journey. You have the power and take that power. When I go to see the doctors or I go to a clinic or something like that, I walk in just like, I don't know if you remember the movie Roadhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? When he walks in with his folder, Doctors look at me like I'm crazy. Here's my folder. It's my history, right? And the thing is that it's because of that. I'm in charge. Nobody knows you better than you. But the thing is that because you're not asking yourself the questions, because, you know, we've been given the authority from the doctor. So the guy's wearing a white coat, he's going to tell you, take this, and people don't know the side effects. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going on, but there's no foundation to it. So how long, they don't ask, how long am I going to be on this pill? Is there anything that I'm going to be, is there a timeline? Am I coming off this? What does it mean if I take it for the rest of my life or whatever? Nobody asks. Like me, when I talk to people, I ask them, are you working out? What are you eating? What are you watching? What are you reading? Right? Those are the questions you got to do, because garbage in, garbage out. So you got to really, really become an expert at managing your environment, managing your inside environment, and really going out for that. But the power's in your hands. And you're going to go through some struggles. There's still some days, especially with this isolation, right? A lot of people are struggling, and a lot of people are going to struggle going back to work as well. People are scared, right? And it's normal. It's normal. There's nothing wrong about having a hard day. There's nothing wrong about having, you know, being sad or being depressed. There's nothing wrong. It's your body telling you something's not aligned.
Right.
Something's off. And mostly what it is that the blueprint inside doesn't match the outside. So something's off. So if you don't ask your inside, your soul, or whatever you want to say, if you don't ask yourself, what's not on right now? What's off? Mostly what come up, and people know, they just don't want to ask the question because they already know the answer. Well, I'm not working out. I'm not, you know, I'm drinking too much, or, you know, I'm not doing things that are good for me. Okay. Everybody, you know, that would be listening to this, yeah, I should do better. Yeah, okay. That's great. Right? We all do this. We're not working out 100%. We're not like doing all these things. We're doing the best we can. And that's the thing. But people would rather have the quick answer, the easy answer, because it's the natural, the process of the brain, the path of least resistance. The brain, just so everybody know, we're talking about elite performers today on this podcast. The thing, the brain is not designed to make you an elite performer. The brain is designed to keep you alive. Yep. Just to survive. That's all it is. If you want to be an elite performer, you need to train it just like a muscle. You need to find ways. You need to go and read the books. You need to go and see the guys. You need to go and do the podcast. You need to go and find out what it is that's going to drive you, and then, you know, research that.
And I love that, because, you know, one of the instrumental parts in you getting better was the fact that you have the confidence in yourself that you can figure this out and take action, and that, you know, you have this sense that you have control over your environment. And I think that's one thing that I gained from the military. I mean, you just kind of, like you said earlier, you walk away after doing certain things, realizing I can pretty much do whatever I put my mind to. Yeah. And so it really served you in that sense. You know, as ironic it is that the military caused the stress, it also put you in a position to really be able to handle it well. And I love what you said about the trauma, because so many people, they think PTS or PTSD and it's all like automatically the military. And it's like, no, there are millions of people who have suffered trauma in other ways that have never been in the military, and
abuse victim, abuse women, abuse children, anything, anorexia, it's all trauma. It's all based on trauma. We just react to it differently, right? So know that whatever trauma you faced, you can deal with. Ask the proper question. Talk to the people who've been there. There's a great story that's out there about the soldier in the trench, right? I don't know if you've ever read it, but the soldier in the trench, it was a soldier in the trench. He was screaming out for help. Along comes a sergeant and says, what's wrong, soldier? And he goes, sir, Sergeant, I'm stuck in this hole. He says, all right, here's a shovel, dig yourself out. And then a guy starts digging, but he's only deeper. Then an officer comes by and says, what's wrong, troop? And the soldier says, sir, I'm stuck in this hole and I can't get out. The officer says, well, do exactly what the sergeant told you to do. Here's a bucket, right? And then the guy keeps on digging. He can't dig himself out. Then the padre comes along. Padre goes, what's happening? And the soldier says, I'm stuck in this hole and I can't get out. The padre goes, well, let's pray about it and I'll come and see you and hopefully you'll get out over the night, right? Soldier's still in the hole. Psychiatrist, same thing. Here's a pill. Try that out. Come and see me next week. And then all of a sudden, he didn't know what to do. Then he turns around. There's another soldier in the trench with him. He says, hey, I'm here. And the guy goes, what are you doing? Now we're both stuck here. He says, all right, buddy. I've already been in this hole. I know the way out. Let's go. Right? So that's peer-to-peer support, right? And I'm not saying anything bad about the professionals and another thing, but the thing is the power is in your hands, and that is very important. when you go see a doctor and they say, I'm going to give you this pill and everything, be sure to ask the questions. What are the side effects? How long am I going to take this?
Right.
What are these things? And they circumvented that, just so you know, in Canada and in the States, because they're supposed to tell you that, but they only got 8 minutes to see you.
Right.
They're supposed to tell you all these things. And if they don't, then they're liable for it. So what they do is that they get you to sign the papers and everything in the reception area before you go in, saying that he gave you all the information. It's a really quick thing that they're doing. They're not doing it because they're evil. They try to process the thing. But
Right.
the thing is because you should do your due diligence and ask and research what it is that you're thinking. And if somebody doesn't tell you, the first thing you should do is work out and eat better. You should ask yourself some questions, because the body is designed to heal itself.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the most powerful takeaways, what you just said there. And I do want to just reiterate what you said is, this is not about the professionals that are designed to help you being wrong. It is about you being the one who has the most responsibility for your well-being.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's 100% up to you. And you cannot go into the office and just pop pills and expect things to get better without educating yourself and knowing it's not their job. Their job is to medicate you if that's what you want, but you have to take the ultimate responsibility. And I came to a similar decision when I was faced with getting out because of the heart condition, because it was, the surgery was mostly effective, but the surgery automatically came with lifelong pills just because of it was like standard protocol. I would have had the surgery, maybe recovered, and I would have been popping pills for life. And just, that didn't set well with me. And I was blessed because my doctor, it didn't set well with him either. He's like, I just don't think this makes the most sense for you right now. But yeah, I love that. You have to be the one that takes control over your outcomes. I mean, it's up to you to get educated, to get smart, to take responsibility for it. There's so much value in that. And that goes beyond just what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Actually, that's the foundation. It's up to you for everything in your life, right? Responsibility, accountability for everything, right? Jocko Willink, it says, extreme ownership.
Yep.
And it's so powerful as just a statement, extreme ownership for everything that I am. So if you go see a doctor and they're so busy, but they want to help you. And they're taking, everybody's passing the buck and saying, this is the right thing, this is the right thing, this is the right thing. If I only got 8 minutes, I got to give you something that's going to help you because you're struggling. I'm seeing you suffer. I want to do it. And those are the tools I have.
Right.
But they want to help you. And most of the doctors, when I see them after work, because I coach some of them, they want to do more, Rory.
Yeah.
They want to do so much more. Some of them are saying, I'm tired of these pills. I want to do these things, but their hands are tied.
Yep.
Because that's their career and their livelihood.
Right.
So they must step along, and like everything, when it becomes big corporation, when it becomes big thing, but they're all good people.
Yeah.
Everybody's got good intention. It's just that they're using the tools that they've been told, and they have in their heart that the pharmaceutical, the people and all that are, and you're going to educate yourself. You say, I'm going to give you this pill, just go home and research what it is, but nobody does.
Right.
Nobody does. I'm going to, we do that. I do that too. Right? I'm going to take something, or let's move away from the medical sides and go over to nutrition. Every time, Atkins, zone diet, carb cutting, all these things. Everybody's like, oh, this is the fad. Everybody jumps on it, and then people get sick. People get right. Nobody thinks about what is that going to mean. And then somebody says, oh, I'm on Atkins, but I'm on the zone. I'm on vegan now, right? Plant-based, all these things. But the thing is that good for you? Oh yeah, man, it's great. It makes so much sense. I watched the movie Game Changer, right? And I was like, man, this is so smart. It's so amazing. The thing is, I'm not designed to eat that much. It hurts me to eat that much plant food.
Right.
Because I did it for 3 months, but for 3 months I had stomach pains. I had everything and all that. Now, what did it do though? It really cut down my consumptions of meat, right? And then I actually had a DNA test, and it told me that I was a Mediterranean diet. Is what I'm from. So now I eat a little bit of fish, a little bit of, more plant, more vegetables, but I'm still eating meat, right? And I'm trying to be as ethical as I can, try to find, ethical farming and all this stuff, grass-fed, wild fish and all these things. I'm trying to adjust for something that works for me. So it's very important. And once again, extreme ownership. Who am I? What do I need? What works for me and what doesn't work? Don't jump on bandwagons. And maybe that's why we're mavericks, Rory. But that's why we're different. Because I'm like, okay, I refuse to watch the Tiger King. You won't be able to pay me enough.
Yeah.
I saw the thumbnail in Netflix. I saw the little preview they shown. There's no way I'm watching that.
Yeah.
That's just a waste of my time. It's just, I'm not getting, but everybody's screaming about it. And then even my friends though, Bruno, I watched the first episode. I was going to walk away, but then my buddy said, no, watch the second one. And then I got hooked. I'm like, dude, you'll never get that time back. And I said, what does that bring into your life? I said, you should see the crazy people.
And that's a question nobody can answer. My wife, I was recording a podcast late one night and I walk out and she's watching it. And I sat down for the last like 5 minutes of the episode. She's like, do you want to watch another one? I was like, no. That's the equivalent for me of watching high school girls sit around and talk about each other. Like what? No, I have real world stuff to do. Yeah, it just blows my mind, especially now everybody. And it's like, I mean, let's be honest. It is entertainment.
It is.
In the sense that it can grab your attention, just like driving by a car wreck can grab your attention. But like
everything is designed now, Rory. If you've watched The Great Hack and all these things, everything is designed to catch your attention.
Right.
If you don't unplug, if you don't go somewhere in the woods or something like it, everything is grabbing your attention. And it's your family. It's everything. That's why, we wake up early in the morning to go do our personal stuff, because that's my time, because at 9 o'clock in the day, my time gets hijacked.
Right.
It's just the way it is. It's just, we got kids, we got wives, we got, business, we got to all do these things. So you got to find that time. And if you spend that time watching, like I said, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So if you find that you're struggling somewhere in your life, what are you watching?
Yeah, and I think there's so much value to the question you asked. What does that bring into your life? Because you could apply that to anything. And I'm a firm believer that everything. I think everything in life is binary. It's either helping you or it's hurting you. There's really because even if it's not helping you, then that means it's just taking up space for something else that could be helping you more. And so I think that's a great question to ask about any aspect of your life.
Yeah, it is. And since you brought that up, I just want to be very clear that it's not about. When we listen to the Gary V's and the Grant Cardones and all these guys that are constantly crushing and telling you 24/7, 365, nobody's like that.
Right.
That's the message to keep people motivated and all these things, but nobody's like that. I'm going to tell you, I love playing video games. That's my time, right? And I'll play. I'll set up those times and I'll play that time because that's my relaxed time. It gets me to, and I like the things where you're doing puzzles and quests and all these things, right? I played Destiny 2, if anybody's on there. But that's the thing, right? And I played with my son. He showed me the game and I started, and that's how we connected and we talked when we're playing. So it's really cool. But the thing is that you can't, it's not sustainable to be 24/7, always crushing, reading books.
Right.
And all these things. And somebody actually told me that, a very successful person, because I was telling him all the books I was reading. And he says, I didn't hear any fiction books in there. I didn't hear any stories or anything like that. And I said, oh, that's funny. He says, Bruno, give your brain a break. If you're constantly reading about business and about performance and about these things, it's just that's why when I coach my CEOs, right, the first 3-4 sessions, they're talking about improving performance and numbers and all these things. But by 5, 6, 7, you're seeing where they're stuck is because their relationship aren't following, their health not following, their things not following, because they're so driven, which is great. But the thing is that, like you just said, you need to, where else in your life are you doing this? So if you take the same intensity that you are driven into your business and everything, and now you bring that over to your relationship and you do the same kind of research there, and you do the same kind of research about your health and all these things, and you really find that there's no such thing as balance in any way. That's the biggest myth that was there, balance of life, because we're always pulled in one direction. That's how you achieve that somewhat balance, right? That smoothness in your life is what you're pulled. If something goes off at home, I can tell you're not at work. You might be physically at work,
right?
But something's driving you over there. So if your health's not happy, you might be at work, but we both got injured. We both got medical conditions. It affects you in a certain way. So if you're not paying attention to that and you're pushing it always aside and you're distracting yourself with what you're successful at, you're going to be missing out and you're going to fall short. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I actually had on here to ask you a little bit about balance. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because you've done so many things. I mean, you had the military, you've run companies, now you've got the coaching, and you Invictus captain, and you've got the Bell Let's Talk ambassador. So I mean, you just have all these things, right? So, yeah, and you kind of answered it. I'm just curious tactically, because it occurs to me there's really probably two camps of people. There's people that are performing at a high level and just want to know how to do more, or I guess how to not do more, but how to get better results. And then there's the people who maybe just feel overwhelmed by life and aren't even sure where to start. You know, they feel like they don't even have time to read a book or to do the things to start building themselves up. So I'd love to hear you talk about how you think about that balance and really how you execute that in your life on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like I said, balance is kind of a myth. You know, there's a big difference. Men in general are problem solvers. They like to find solutions. And then so we're constantly looking for things to fix, and we're going to focus on and men are driven by praise, and we're driven by things that we're successful at. And when we do that, we kind of get hooked a little bit, because that's where you get your value, your fulfillment, and your thing.
Right.
And some of the most successful people that I've met are actually super solid family people, because that's their foundation, Rory. Mm-hmm. That's their first line of defense. Because in any day, and we saw it with this isolation, it could go away. It could go away, and what's left there? I learned that when I got out of the military, when I was released. My job was gone, everything was gone. What was left? The family. Those are the people there. The military didn't call me back to check how I was doing. Nobody did. You know, that's the thing. That's the big machine, right? Right. You're a number, and you know, you're done. Go home, do these things, and you go to Veterans Affairs, and they'll take care of you, and that's another big machine and all this stuff. But the thing is that family was there. And family isn't always blood. We've got to be very clear about this, right? It's about the people that are there. But it's your circle of support. So how do you achieve balance? Well, once again, it's about the question you ask yourself. Your life is totally directly related to the quality of the questions that you ask of yourself and of other people, right? It's because you and I can have a conversation, and that's what makes podcasts so beautiful, is that you have a series of questions that will direct the direction. But when you're having discussions with people, are you asking the right questions, or are you just talking about Tiger King? Right? Right. That's a reality. That is, yeah. Right? So we've all seen the quotes, right? People who would talk about, when I go and when I was at the Invictus Games, or I met like President Bush and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these things, these people talk about solution and what things they can do better. And I've had conversation with other people where all they talk about is problems, mm-hmm. Right? So it's all about your language. It's all about your physiology, your focus, and your language. That's a triad. That's what you are. So what are you paying attention to? What are you focused on? And that directs it. Like, this conversation is vibrating. This is energetic, because we are talking about things that matter. It's very hard today because of the mainstream media, because of the social media, because of everything. It's constantly bombarded by everything that now people are lost. They don't know which side of the fence to stand on, because they're getting information, they're getting misinformation, they're getting this. But to get back into the balance of things, what is it that you want? What do you need? And how will you know you achieve it? And the third question is the most important, because when you can ask anybody, what do you want? I want to make a lot of money. Great. If you stay there, great. Okay. What's a lot of money? Right? What do you need? I just need a beautiful girlfriend. Oh, great. What's that going to bring you? And how will you know you get it? Right? Now, when you ask the question, how will you know you got those things? Then is when you get into the details. Now you're asking your subconscious brain to go, wait a minute. How will I know? Well, I'll just know it because I'll have a nice car and lots of money and a girl. Okay, what's that going to bring you? As you can see, even me, I'm trying to stop myself from going down the question road, right. But that's how I get into the depth. Yeah. And once you get into the depth, if you can ask those questions, then you'll get the real answers. And you'll find out that your answers are going to be way more valuable and more powerful, emotionally charged. But the thing is that most people, when they start getting into breaking that crust that I call of the surface, it starts to sting a little bit. Yeah. Most people back off, right? We see that in the coaching industry. First of all, people don't know about coaching. Two, when they find out, that it costs money, then they go, oh, I'm not too sure. And then they say, okay, I can see the benefit, and I'll pay for it. And then so they invest and they pay for it. And then we start going into debt, and then they pull off. They go, I don't want to go there because it stings, it hurts, or right. I can see where I've failed, or and there's no failure, there's only feedback. So the thing is that that's where the magic actually happens, because you're going in depth. That's how I think personally. I believe that the balance is there. is really to get the answers that you need, not the answers of other people, not the answers of Tony Robbins, not the answers of Grant Cardone, not the answers of Bruno or of Rory. I give all my clients the power. That's what I do. I just create the space, right? This is what it is. I'm just asking the question. I'm just following their train of thought and challenge them and say, because everything you need is inside of you. You've already know the answer of what you need to do, right? It's universal. It's conscious, right? And the thing is that people are afraid to ask the questions because they know the answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So for the balance
that.
of, yeah.
Super applicable. And I really hope people will take that one and run with it. I'm curious how that looks in your life tactically. Are there any specific routines or, rituals? I mean, just that you've sort of implemented to make sure that the things that you value get done. I mean, how do you apply that in a physical way?
Right. So, daily routine is the best. Morning routine, daily routine, try to be on that. What that creates, it creates a frame for your performance. Yeah, it creates I thought my dogs. It creates a frame for what you want to achieve, right? It's, that's the thing. People expect to get these great success because they see it on TV. They're seeing these things, right? And especially with the media today, right? We're seeing all these musicians, all these things. They're thinking, oh, they weren't here yesterday. They're here today. And then boom, they're good. Start a YouTube channel. You'll be a star. All these things. They don't know the amount of work that goes in the back because nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about whatever. So what I found is that when I was talking to all these people and asking the quality questions, what makes you different? What do you do when you wake up in the morning, right? Do you go for a run? What do? Do you read? And we find out that everybody that's very successful, starting from Bill Gates to anybody that's successful in your circle that you look up to. I'm a big fan of Richard Branson, all these things. They all have a morning routine. They all have a schedule of things that they do that makes them consistently successful. And just so you know, when I talk to them, they do it anywhere between 80 to 90% of the time, right? Because everybody's human. That's the message you got to send out there, right? For forever, I used to, when I owned my gym, I was training every day. I was physical and all these things. And I had a lot of body pains and all these things. Now I work out, 5 days a week that I work out. And then the other 2 days I go for my hikes with the dogs and everything. Still, every day I do that. But the thing is that I actually feel better, right? Because I'm not overtaxing my body.
Right.
I'm not, pushing it past, because I used to do that because, military trained and CrossFit and all that stuff.
Right.
I want more because I was getting a high from it, right? You're getting a high. I was getting fulfilled. I feel great there because this gives me value. It's the same thing for the guys that are driven by success and CEOs and all that. I go to the office and I'll stay there from 5 o'clock in the morning till midnight because I'm getting my value there. I'm going to tell you that that's not balance and it's not going to be sustainable. And you can see it. We've seen it. We've seen movies about it. We've seen it in the news. All these Wall Street guys, they fall apart and they go into cocaines and they start using drugs and then you start using and all this stuff because the blueprint inside doesn't match the outside. Something got to break if you're not paying attention to it. So I think that to answer your question, I would say a very strong morning routine, which is going to be trial and error. You need to find out. Some people like yoga. Some people like to work out, read 10 pages of a book, a journal, pray, meditate, all these things. Do you find the things that work? It took me 6 months to figure one that worked for me, of trying this and that. We were doing the Wim Hof cold dips in the ocean. Nice. We were doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then, it evolves. It kind of changes, because life happens. But if you keep that discipline of having something set up, then I have that. So now when I wake up in the morning, I do it and go for my walks and I go for my meditation and I read my books or I read up on the research that I'm doing or something like that. That gets me ready then to just wake up and hit work right away.
Right.
Some people do that. Wake up an hour before, quick breakfast, coffee, off to work, and you're stressed from minute one.
Right.
I found that having that 2 hours prior to work made huge difference in the morning, and have a night routine as well, right? Listen to something that's very peaceful and gets you to kind of calm down, right? Don't watch Rambo or 24 or whatever that is that's going on, or the Tiger King.
I'll send you a box set of Tiger King.
Oh, dude, I can't believe they make that stuff.
I love this. And this is all segueing really well into, what you're doing now with the coaching. And I know you've got some different certifications and you've been through so much training just on that. I mean, this is after the military. You went through you're a master practitioner of NLP now.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Through the Erickson coaching programs. I'd love to hear why or how you sort of came across those and decided that those, you needed those to become a better coach. If it was, had you identified that you sort of had some weaknesses as a coach, or was this something you did proactively knowing that you wanted to become a coach? I mean, at what point, and the reason I ask is because it would have been easy to just be like, well, I have all this experience and military background and everything. And like, of course I can coach, right? But you went the next step and you went ahead and got extra additional training as a coach to be even better at that. So I would just love to hear about that decision and what motivated you to do that.
Yeah, very good question. The thing is that, like I said earlier, I found out that coaching, I was already naturally a coach from the fitness world. And then when you're in a coach like that, people kind of, and remember, 11 years in the restaurant and bar business, I was a bartender as well, right? At a very young age. And people tell you stuff when they're drinking and all these stuff. They're telling you their problem. So right. I became really apt at listening and at figuring things out. And like I said, I have a gift for behaviors and patterns, and then finding out where people are caught in the loop or something's missing. And the thing is that when I started to look into that and when I went to, what really changed things for me, Rory, is the trip to the North Pole. So the trip to the North Pole was organized by an organization called True Patriot Love here in Canada. They took 12 ill and injured soldiers to the North Pole with business leaders in Canada. These guys are millionaires, very successful people. And the conversation I was starting to have with them kind of made me realize that I was really interested in that. I'm always looking for growth, right? These are the two needs that really fulfill you, growth and contribution. So basically I was looking for growth, and I was finding that one thing I was missing was language. And I was hearing from them, like I said, where did you do your MBA, or what education do you have, or all these things. So I knew something was missing. And being from the military, I knew I could do anything I wanted to. I knew I could switch it because I was already doing it. Once again, when I was having discussion, some of these guys are like, oh man, I never thought about that. And these are guys who are older and more successful than me. Oh, right. Bruno, I never thought about that. And wow, that's a good thing. Oh, and then you think I could do that with my team, especially around team building? This is really something I'm really good at. And they were like, oh, wow, you think that? And I was like, yeah, that's what they're just missing. They're looking for significance. And they're saying to you, they just told you, they said they think they're not being listened to and they don't have an impact and all these things. There's a new generation and all that. So I was saying, I'm missing the language. I'm missing the, I guess, certification. I'm missing the paper. I'm missing all these things. So I started to follow the people. I've always listened to Tony Robbins. I've always listened to him. So I started to do all this training and all this stuff. And then that's when I learned about NLP and Milton Erickson and all this stuff. So I started this is what I got to do. And I was interested in it for personal reasons. Like it just drives me to find out how we work, how humans can be moved. And that's when I understood the conditioning out of the military. It makes so much sense with me. And I said, I get it now. It's just right. So I get it 100%. Now, if you can do that with anybody outside without the trauma yeah. and the stuff blowing up, yeah, then we're golden. Yeah, exactly. So that's when I started to research, what are these guys? What did Tony do? Tony is a master practitioner in neurolinguistic programming. And then his technique is to follow everybody that's successful and ask them the question. So I started doing that. What do you do? Talk to psychologists, talk to psychiatrists, talk to, coaches, talk to CEOs, talk to these guys. When I met with President Bush, what are you doing? And all these things. Great guy, beautiful guy. Arnold, same thing, right? You listen to Arnold. One of his favorite quote that he says, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pockets, right? The guy, all these people, they all have, and what I found, Rory, is that everybody's got a piece of the puzzle. Nobody's got the whole thing.
Right.
So if you ask those questions, then you're getting that. So that's what led me to get that education. And I said, and now I can answer, I don't have an MBA, and that's a good thing because I'm not trained like you. You have an MBA and you're stuck right now.
Right.
So let's try something else that I know about that we can do, right? But of course, I did also some research in MBAs in the business and running businesses and all that stuff. So I have that background because you need to have that understanding of how business operates. So I did that studying as well. But the thing is that that's just, and I continue to do so. I'm always going to be learning about something, right? I researched for about a year on a relationship just because I needed to fix mine. I needed to sort out because I was repeating the same patterns with my new wife. So I needed to research what's going on here. What's happening? What am I missing? Right. And we started reading the books about that and really go in depth in that. So I think that's for me, that's what drove me to that. And then, having conversation with guys like you and having conversation with people who are driven by finding those pieces of the puzzle that when you arrive at the end, this is the whole package.
Right. You mentioned something I think is really, really important. You said that the two things that are necessary are growth and contribution. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you think about impact and contribution. And if these are things that are really conscious thoughts for you on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, or, if it sort of inform the goals you set, but it's not something that comes up very often. I mean, just how do you think about impacting other people and having a contribution on them in general?
Actually, growth and contribution are part of the 6 human needs. They're universal. So basically, we have 6 human needs: certainty, uncertainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth, and contribution. No matter what, you will achieve those needs. You need to fill them. The important thing to remember is 1, knowing them; 2, to reach them with that provides a benefit to you. Let's say there's an example here. Are you an honest person?
Yes.
Yes, you are, right? Even if you would have answered no, that would make you an honest person,
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, right. Have you ever told a lie?
Yes.
That's because you were looking for certainty or love and connection. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Subconsciously, you will fill those needs. Now, a lot of people look at addicts and people who drink alcohol and all these things, and they're saying, what are these people doing? They're looking for certainty because they're not certain about their lives. They're not certain about what they're doing. It's usually due to trauma.
Right.
And they're not certain they don't like the way they feel, but they're going to be 100% certain that if they drink that beer or take that drug, how they're going to feel. And it's the same thing every single time. That's because they're filling the need of certainty. Variety, right? We could have variety by, finding a job. Like I like variety, so I'm a consultant. I don't go to work at an office. I like to move. I like to do things. I'm a big fan of variety. But you can have variety, swiping right on Tinder, right? You can have variety by jumping. We see that now. People are looking for variety. They're jumping from job to job to job. Nobody stays more than 3 to 6 months. We hear that in the young crowd. They're looking for variety, right? Significance. Significance. You can achieve significance by helping others, by being part of an organization, by doing these things. Or you can put a gun to someone's head and you're the most significant person in their lives, right? And it's the same thing with love and connection. You can find love and connection with your family, with your friend, and finding the right people for you. Or once again, you can find love and connection by swiping right or, other needs. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The 2 other ones are growth and contribution. Growth and contribution, you actually have to actively seek those out. And those are the best one. They're called the needs of the spirit. If you're constantly working on growth, you're constantly being fulfilled. Because you're working on your growth, you're growing, you're changing, you're feeling value, you're feeling all these things. And contribution, well, like Tony says, the secret of living is giving. I've never felt bad about giving anything. That's why I do most of my mental health work for free, right? Yeah. Because people that are struggling don't have that kind of money. They don't, the system is overtaxed because of it, right? So I never pass the chance to help someone and everything. And at the same time, I'm reaching my significance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So those needs are subconsciously, they're going to be filled. So the secret here is to make sure that you're filling them. Once again, taking the power in your own hand and saying, okay, I know I have these needs that need to be filled. How am I going to achieve them? And actually have a direction and discipline to be able to fill that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I love that. Well, we have been talking for a long time, my man, and it has been a blast, and I'm so grateful for everything you've shared here. I do have one more question, but before I get to that, I just want to give you an opportunity to let the audience know how to connect with you, where to find you, and just give them some guidance on what you want them to do next.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They can go on my site at brunoguevremont.com, and my Instagram or Facebook. They can reach out, send me an email. If if you have a team, if you have a company, if you're yourself struggling with something, reach out. We'll have a chat for sure. But mostly I love working with teams. Like I've done some work with Lululemon and all these companies and all that. And I really enjoy doing that. I enjoy moving people, shifting people.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Just that 2 millimeter shift every day, just to get them going over there, right? Because the time's going to pass anyway. So you might as well do some work on it and make it your time, not somebody else's.
Absolutely. So last question, Bruno, what does legacy mean to you?
Legacy is leaving the earth, living this earth better than when you found it. That's exactly. There's a very good quote out there that I actually live by. It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. The description of success: if you've planted a garden, if you've helped a social cause, if you've made somebody's day better, that is to achieve success. So I think that's for me, that's legacy, right? Making sure that people, yeah, I have a thing I do with clients sometimes. I'm like, why don't you write your obituary? What do you want people to say about you when you're gone? That wakes a lot of people up when they're stuck, right? Because you're like, what do you want them to say? People never think about that because they think, we all think we're invincible. You and I, even so, we jumped out of planes and stuff, right? So the thing is that if you write your obituary, it wakes you up. They're going to say, what do you want people to say about you? And then once you write it up, are you actively working on making this happen? It comes down to, okay, there's my obituary. I want people to say, Bruno was a contributor. Bruno helped so many people. Bruno did this, and he left, his son and all this stuff, and he did great things, right? I'm not going in because it's personal, but the thing is that that's what it is. So is watching Tiger King serving that purpose, right? Is that, maybe it is, or maybe that's, if you're into that, if you're into, I've been bashing Tiger King here, but here's what I'm going to say. If that's my time, then perfect. As long as you say that's my time and you don't go watching that stuff all the time. It's like me playing video games, right? Video games doesn't bring anything else but just a break, right? Does that make sense? A break where I don't have to use my brain other than the fact that to just like, pew, 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 doing that and having a discussion with my son and having fun and all these things.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Bruno, it's been so good having you. I'm really grateful for your time. I thank you so much for coming on, for everything you've shared with us, and just, being so generous with all your knowledge and all your experience. For anybody listening, I'll post show notes. In the show notes, I'll post links to all of Bruno's social profiles and his website so you guys can reach out and connect there. And if you like this episode, I really hope you'd leave a review and give us some feedback and just help us make the episode better. But yeah, once again, Bruno, I just appreciate it so much, man. It's been great chatting with you.
Rory, you're asking some amazing questions. I love it. And it was a pleasure. It's just amazing. This has just been like a good vibration of energy as a conversation. Thank you.
I'm so glad, man. It's my pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you, man.